everything demands so much that you're like, oh, it's either my mental health or this thing. But, you do come across things, whether it's, relationships in your life that are just getting more and more and more toxic. That is something that I've definitely experienced and in a huge way, and how much self-talk you have to have and become really strong in self-talk. I've written a song called Warrior, which is kind of about that. It's about, I'm cool. It's not actually, it's interesting because it's not talking about like going to war, but it is kind of a war inside your mind. It's like, you are in a really dark place, like kind of talking about the other party, like you're in a really dark place, but don't let that pull me down, and then it's kind of like, I'm not going to let it pull me down. I'm calling out the warrior that's living deep inside of me. Never let this fire burn low. And it's kind of about that. Don't let yourself go. Don't let other people's darkness and what they're going through. Don't let it speak to your mind and tell you that you're anything less. When you're young, you kind of take for granted this kind of self-efficacy and this like, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm me, I can do this, I can go do a handstand, I can achieve whatever I want. And my girls the other day told me, Mum, I'm gonna be the next songwriter for the next Zombies movie, which is basically like a fantasy high school musical. And I'm like, I mean, they watch me write music, so they're like, this is a genuinely possible thing. They're like, we can record this at home. And I mean, they're 7 and 5, and they've got these plans. And then the next thing, I walk out and I discover that they're now climbing the banisters and pretending like playing scenes, that they're now going to video and be actors in. So they're now directors, songwriters, and actors. I'm like, wow, like if I had that confidence, I would rule the world. Like, I'm not saying that I genuinely would rule the world, but I could rule my part of the world, because and that's something that you can lose as you either are chipped away at by other people's comments or thoughts over time, or people, most of the time it's people really close to you who for whatever reason have their own expectations or have toxic behaviors as well. Like there is that as well. And so for me, I'm a very, generally a very giving person, and it was a real struggle for me to turn around and be like, I really need to care about what I love and what I really want out of life. My husband, for example, loves fitness, and there are aspects of that I really admire and really wanted. I was like, yes, he can train me. I'm never letting him train me again. It's not going to happen. He did some training with the SAS, and that is still in him. Like every time you go to the gym, there's that kind of persona that sort of kicks in. So, getting his advice occasionally, I mean, it's a concern whenever you bring it up. You just don't want to bring it up. But on the flip side of that, I really want to be a musician, and really, well, I am a musician, but I really want to achieve my goals in music, right? Which is kind of a bit of a different thing. Rather than just being a musician, I have these very long-term, very specific goals. And it was really hard for him to kind of wrap his mind around that, because for him, he wants us all to be like this fit family going out and adventuring on the slopes of something really difficult. Really difficult. And I know this exactly, just like anything, hiking, man, like, and it's kind of like, well, why don't you want to do it too? And it took me a really long time. I lost myself to that when we first got married, because I so much wanted to be, there's an aspect of, I really want to please you and be as awesome at this thing as you think we should be, like as a family, and this is the dream life. But it wasn't my dream life. And so it's been a lot of toing and froing of getting to a point where now he's like, oh, hey, can you teach me songwriting or something, like where there's a tiny bit of interest back the other way. And I really had to push for for being who I really, really wanted to be inside and always have been, you know, I would rather float through fields than run through them. You know, I would really rather sit on a hilltop with daisies and write songs in my notebook with my guitar.
I have known Jasmine since she was born, and she literally used to float around with daisies in her hair.
And you know, as much as I've grown up and I know, you know, there's a, I don't know if I laugh at that part of myself, but I also really love it. You know, I'm like, I actually, you know, I recently wrote a song, I want to live in a fairy tale inside of my mind, and I want to stay here, you know, because there are things I kind of was really doing some self-examination of what are the things I really love about the fairy tale world and what do I really want out of it. And it's not that we should live in fairy tale worlds and ignore our responsibilities and float through fields all the time, but there has to be a balance in your life where you are still like authentically who you really, really are, and that you have people, or you explain to people around you, you know, you know, that this is actually who you are and this is the way you want to do it, and stand up for that part of yourself.
I think what it sounds like you're saying is that, you know, becoming a wife, becoming a mother, you can actually lose your identity. And in recent years, it's been a lot about not only finding that identity again, but also celebrating who you are really, and really believing in yourself. And I guess that whole thing about Warrior, Jasmine and I actually, we had this we're very close, aren't we, Jasmine? And we went off together and we got tattoos on our ankles together, our first tattoo. Not our last tattoo, but our first. And mine says, and both of them are really special, the special messages. Mine says, I am enough, and that means a lot to me. And yours says warrior, and you've just talked about, you know, why that's important to you. And I think what I've noticed about you through this time is that I see it as strength despite adversity. And I really see that in you. I really see that in you. In fact, it's sometimes I'm really amazed at how much you can you know, how well you go through things and keep your, and in the sense that, you know, because you've gone through some tough times, but I feel like that person that believes in herself really holds on. I know that there are times where that gets harder, but you kind of really believing in yourself and taking care of yourself. It's like there's a real determination, which is that warrior determination, which is really cool.
It's an interesting perspective on warrior, isn't it? Because, you know, I mean, I'm such a sucker for fantasy movies where a woman has the sword. I just am. You know, I always will be. And I named my my music persona Aethel, which is actually the Anglo-Saxon warrior queen from, you know, way back when, a true historical figure who was basically renowned by all the surrounding countries as being a warrior queen. And I think she was technically a lady, but that's how they referred to her in their own history books. You know, it wasn't just her land, it was the surrounding land. And I just feel like it is a strength of what's inside you to fight for whatever it is. You know, for me it's like I don't know. I don't think it is to fight for who you really are and who you really want to be and what you really want life to look like, and but also celebrating, like, because that could get really depressing too. Because I mean,
the fight is exhausting.
I mean that, but also like when does life ever perfectly look like how we want it to, you know? So it's like the moments, taking the small moments, which your workbook actually did teach me. So for example, like, oh my gosh, I love the spa right now. You know, I am just loving being around these people right now. You know, man, this is just such an enjoyable experience going out for coffee, you know, with you. And, you know, it's like taking the moments where even with my girls, because like it gets crazy and hectic when you're either teaching or I'm in the middle of projects, and it's like, oh, I just love your cute little personality, and like taking that moment to just really stare at them and be like, you're beautiful, because that's actually, it feels like self-care for a mother to do that and take
It's actually
time.
living in the present moment, which
Mm.
is, living in the present moment, which is something you often have to train yourself to do, because we tend to be often looking for that next goal, that next achievement, that next thing, or we're worrying about something in the future or reflecting on something in the past, and we miss so much, and like down the track we're like, oh really, we look back on those times. So it's about enjoying the present moment, those little moments, because life isn't easy, and storms come and go, and so those moments need to be treasured.
100%. And I will say this right now, like this is what I've decided recently. I am living my dream. We're kind of as poor as church mice, like coming off the Christmas holidays and having decided to like move, partway through the year, and, messing up holiday pay and all sorts of things. So like obviously there are stresses in life, but I am like the happiest that I have been in just forever, the longest time. And I sort of realized the other day, like I am, I'm creating music. Like I'm actually, I've driven myself in my goals and my goal-centered mentality, my single-minded passion to get music sounding the way I want to. Creating your song, that was like a huge milestone, the song for the podcast, because it was like I produced this, I recorded it all. It's like all my vocal, interesting things happening. It was a producer mentality where I was like, oh, I'm going to whisper sing this part, I'm going to do these choices. And it was like, I'm actually now living who I've always wanted to be. And I have on my laptop, because I open up my laptop, I do all my recording through my laptop. And as my background, I have a picture of me, my mum, and my sister, Kirsten, as little. Like we were like 5. I was 5 and she was like 3. And it's like just a moment. Like my mum would probably hate it because of her hair being wild or something, but for me, and my hair's like one hair's in a plait, one thing's in a plait, the other one's just like out, but I'm like, I'm looking at my little self. And when I open up the laptop and I do these things, I'm actually saying to myself, like little Jasmine would be so mind boggled and so excited to see what big Jasmine can do today. Like I would have never dreamed that I could produce my own music. I didn't dream that I could produce my own music. I thought that was something, for some weird reason, I thought it was something that, this is a thing. The men do the audio, like technical stuff, and can I actually do it? It's a big discussion. There's a big discussion because apparently only 2% of women do audio work. So the fact that I produced my own track as a woman, like I am now part of the 2%. I now have arrived. But at the same time, like I've got so much to grow into, but little Jasmine would have had no idea that I could create beautiful ethereal soundscapes, and it could be on a podcast, and I could, I also wanted to be a teacher. So like, I'm basically doing all the things that little Jasmine thought would just be the most amazing thing ever. And so I like to remind myself that is epic. Like, what did your younger self want to do? What did your younger self want to do?
There were about 5 things. The first one was I wanted to be a ballerina. That's not going to happen. At some point I wanted to be a journalist, and I figure we could tie this into journalist. I've done lots of press releases through my work. I feel like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I do remember when I was 12, 10, 12, 9, somewhere around there. One of those. Your mum. I remember sitting down with your mum, and she was with her friend, and both of them, I just told them some deep stuff. And they said, I remember them saying to me, wow, you've got amazing insight, wisdom beyond your years. And I remember hearing that, and it was probably the first time that I felt valued, I think, for who I was. And so I think, it's really interesting. I have to really think about that. I love that you have a picture of yourself and reflect on what little Jasmine would think about you. Yeah, I think that's really awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to say, particularly about the song? Anything else about the song that you would want to, before we finish today, about what the word, some of the lyrics?
So the verses were really about so it's saying, I'm walking a fine line between shadow and fire, and the other part, the second verse is kind of the same. It's really about, in the second verse it says, will I sink beneath the flames or rise even higher? There is actually a lot of significance in those two aspects of the song because, for one, when you are going through depression, when I was going through that, I felt like there was no happy ending one way or the other. Like I was either choosing like darkness or something really painful, because it was just like you're either giving of yourself too much and you just have nothing left, or you're giving up on everything. And there are all those sorts of, there's just a battle. There's just seems to be like you're really stuck, and it can be really debilitating. And I think that happens, you get stuck in your head a lot and you really feel like you're walking a fine line and you just can't move. You get incapacitated, and that's a big feature of depression because you end up wanting to just lie in bed, and just because you're just so caught up in your mind with the struggle. And in the second verse I say, will I sink beneath the flames or rise even higher? And the big part of that, the big meaning behind that is, there's this idea that we talked about a lot when I came to stay with you and you gave me the workbook. So it was around that time we had a lot of discussions around your hard times becoming your best things. So your hard times birthing some of the best things in your life, or your most powerful contributions to the world, maybe, or and we talked about your experience with postnatal depression and how that birthed Mothers Helpers, and you helping all the women that program has helped. It's incredible. And for me, I'm like, well, so what is my thing? What am I going to choose to do? Am I going to sink beneath the flames, or am I going to overcome and do the best things that I could do? Some of my best songs, I use them cathartically, and like I will be raw and true and emotional in my lyrics because it's like this is the thing that I want to birth from this hard time, create this beautiful thing. So yeah, I think that's why I included that, because it's, will you sink beneath the flames, or will you actually become better than you've ever been before? And that is still my desire for myself and for every person who's gone through their hardest times, because we're all full of so much potential, and that can be both crippling when you're really down, or it can be exhilarating, inspiring, and just like that determination and that warrior spirit to actually achieve the thing that you want so much to be and achieve. So those are two parts of the song. And another, so we talked a little bit about the chorus and about I need you to save me from the dark. I need you to help me through the fog. So of course I wanted to tie in the title of your program. I really wanted to. And so that was the fog, but I also just loved that it just lyrically flowed. That is a great achievement as a songwriter and lyricist, when you know that it just like expresses exactly what you want, which is, my cry for help when I first did that test. It was basically, I need someone. I need someone. And for me, it was you specifically, because of all the help and the amazing support that you gave me through my hardest time. So it's like, I actually need you. I need this program. I think the world needs this program. Do you call it a program, by the way? Yeah, okay. So yeah, it needs the book. I mean, yeah, it needs it. And so I wanted the song chorus to reflect how important it really was to learn the concepts that you have in there about, your health, mental, physical, medication, how that works, goal setting, and being really kind to yourself, and changing your self-talk. That was probably the biggest thing I also learned, was changing your self-talk, not being like down on yourself and negative, but rather like encouraging yourself and being like, wow, you did a great job despite how hellish that was. Great job, Jasmine, And I have that kind of running monologue inside my mind now, because I was just determined. When I learned how powerful that was, it ties back to something that's connected to my faith too, which is the whole like taking every thought captive. That was like a big thing. Like, I read it and I was like, this is exactly like changing, it talks also about like renewing your mind. Like, when you're depressed, you desperately need to renew your mind with like beautiful things, whatever is pure and whatever is lovely. And I wasn't doing that. I was like, I realized, I'm like, I'm not even living true to my own faith by letting these thoughts run rampant inside me. And it was so horrible. And by choosing to take those thoughts and be like, this isn't actually true. Like, why should I be climbing Mount Everest when I've just given birth? Like, who says that I have to do that? That is so unfair. Why should my house be spick and span when I've been like up all night and changing like, punamis? Like, that is just ridiculous. Like, the amount of time you spend hanging out tiny little pairs of clothes is incredible, And so changing my self-talk to being, wow, you're actually doing amazing, And I knew that God wanted me to think that too. He actually wanted me to be like, you're beautiful, you're loved, you're cherished, you're not like the dirt underneath someone's boot because you didn't do the dishes or something. I don't know. It's the kind of things that you sort of think, and it gets actually worse in your mind and twisted when you feel like you're failing. Feeling like you're failing is one of the worst feelings. It really is. You feel so like you are not truly who you're meant to be. And so it's really, who actually am I meant to be right now in this season, in this exact moment? Who am I meant to be? Well, I'm meant to be someone who's sleeping, because that's really good for you. And my baby's been waking up all night, and I'm the only one who can wake up for it. So I need to be someone who's really kind to myself when my day doesn't go as planned, when I'm a little bit grumpy. I just need to take time out away from everything, and I need to look after myself, because otherwise it's just going to descend, into darker and darker places. So yeah, so all of those thoughts, they all came from your workbook. All of those things you talk about. What is that section where you talk about meditation and mindfulness and your values, and you also talk about how you can use your faith to get there as well? I remember you specifically coaching me in that, and I was like, this is one of the most powerful things I have ever done, And it was, because it changed my whole mindset of, why am I letting either someone else's expectations or even my own tell me like a narrative that's actually untrue to reality? Like, who is capable of living the super woman mum life if you're sick and you're, all the things that happened? And a lot of mums go through horrible things, C-sections, like, my gosh, like the amount of things that we go through as women and are kind of expected to carry on like normal, is phenomenal. And some people phenomenally push through and do it, but it is so hard. And so learning to be kind to yourself in the midst of that, even if you're being superwoman, learning to be like, actually, you are superwoman. Just take a moment,
just acknowledge the things that you are doing.
Yeah.
Self-talk. Yeah, and I think it's just really, it's one of the symptoms of depression is negative self-talk. So, for many people, it's not necessarily a natural thing. For other people, it's been their lifelong because self-esteem has been low for a long time. But yeah, for some people that turns up with depression. And so just even that, just being kind to yourself about, oh yeah, this is depression again. So this is the voice of depression again. You know, just even being kind about the fact that it's there. And I always say that kindness is the key to learning it towards yourself, is the key to changing anything and going in any, you know, in terms of self-growth. Being compassionate and kind to yourself is the key. So I just want to say thank you for your time and your story today, sharing so honestly. I'm extremely proud of you. Just, you know, love you lots, obviously, but you know, and you know, you're not just a niece to me, you're you know, really close friend in my mind. So, you know, pretty special person, amazing person. You've got a lot of wisdom that you've just shared, and you've got a beautiful heart. And I'm a huge fan of your music. I think you're just incredibly talented, and I'm so thrilled with your song, and I'm so glad it's on the podcast. And yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that today. And yeah, how proud I am of you, of not just your music and your talent and all of that, but also just of the person that you've grown into and have been all along, sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Jasmine. And you know, for just sharing this message to people that there is hope, you know, that there is hope in the darkness, that there is light in the darkness. And you know, it is one of the most beautiful things about art is that is how you can turn pain into beauty. That is a huge example of that. So you know, yeah.
Thank you for having me. I am so honored to be on your podcast, for one, and to be the artist that you've got, you know, creating a song for your theme song. That is such a huge honor. I don't take that lightly. You know, I've been wanting to say this for a while too. You know, it was such a big moment for me to go from, you know, making my own music that I just love to actually making something, like custom making it for such a powerful resource and message, you know, that this is going to be. And so, you know, I really threw my all into that because I just wanted so much to carry the heart of you know, what you do. So, you know, my hope for people is that if they love the song, which you don't have to love the song, but if you love the song, that when you listen, I especially created it with a very atmospheric sound because I wanted it to bring people peace. You know, that when you listen to it, you feel like you are actually taking a rest of sorts. And, you know, as much as it's taking you through a journey of like, this is what I want to seek beauty and clarity again. You know, I'm walking this really fine line and I'm really struggling. I need someone to help me. But that while you're hearing that, you are in a really peaceful place that's caring for your soul. You know, that's kind of how I created the soundscape to give that aura and atmosphere and effect. So yeah.
Well, for me it does that. And
I win.
yeah, and as you know, I often listen to your music and I would love to have more of your music to listen to, and I often listen to it at certain times when I feel like I need a bit of healing, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I think that's the element that I feel in your music is a real healing element.
That's so interesting. People actually ask, like branding people when you're starting out in anything, they ask like, what is the message that you have? So I sat down one day and I was like, I want my music to bring peace. I want it to bring peace to people. So how cool is that? So you listen to it for healing. Yeah. And that's exactly like that's the goal. Even though some of them are quite like weighty sort of topics, but always said in a sort of ethereal way.
I think it helps that I know your heart and and I think that comes through in your music. I know that your heart is full of love and care, and I think that definitely comes through in your music.
Yay.
So the dog has just arrived and put her head on my lap, which probably means please take me for a WALK. So we will leave the interview there now, and thank you, Jasmine.